We have a guest today, Representative Stockstill. Thank you for showing up today and filling in. And Representative Droege is on WebEx. So, Representative, thank you for zooming in from WebEx. And with that, we're going to open the hearing, or we're going to work 2159. Do I have a motion? Representative Bueller. Do I have a second? Second by Representative Ruiz. Committee discussion. Representative Bueller.
Without further ado, Mr. Chair, I move we pass out House Bill 2159 favorably. Unless there's no discussion, or if there's discussion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Oh, no, sorry. Discussion now. We can't. Okay. Carly, you have amendments. You have an amendment?
I don't. I mean, I do, but I don't.
I have an amendment.
You've got it.
I'd like a motion. I'll make a motion that we accept the amendment. Do I have a second? Second by Representative Bryce.
There's the physical vote on it. This is a no-brainer. I'm not sure what the amendment is. All right. Whoops.
Carly, would you like to explain the amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment begins on page 2, line 10. Yes, and would strike, oh, apologies, line 8, and would strike any enforcement officer as defined. I apologize, I got confused. It would restore the struck language in lines 8, 9, and 10. So it would then read, amendments thereto, any law enforcement officer as defined by KSA 22-2202, and amendments thereto. Going down to line 12 and 13, it would strike that definition. And again, in lines 17 and 18, it would strike that definition. Going to page 3, it would insert after line 42 a new sub 3 that would read, a law enforcement agency shall be exempt from the subsection unless electing to provide an emergency opioid antagonist dispensed or furnished pursuant to the opioid antagonist protocol in subsection parent B. And then lastly, on page 4, it would strike all in lines 21 through 27.
Committee discussion on the amendment. Representative Weichel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the second change that's made in here on the bottom of page 3, am I correct in understanding this means that the law enforcement agency would still have to have the medical, what was it called, like a licensed medical provider that they have to pay to help obtain the Narcan? Or am I misunderstanding?
Carly.
Mr. Chair, Representative, no, they would not need to have a physician medical director, which I believe is what you're referring to.
It says unless electing to provide an emergency opioid antagonist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. I'll give you a little context to this. So initially, when this statute was put into place, emergency opioid antagonists were prescription only. In 2023, Narcan went over the counter. So initially, this section of law was a workaround so that a law enforcement agency or a first responder could get Narcan without having a prescription fulfilled for it. The opioid antagonist protocol was that workaround to obtain the Narcan. But now that it's over the counter, the law enforcement through Ed Klump came to us and asked for this amendment to exempt the law enforcement agency from being required to have a physician medical director to administer Narcan. So unless they are operating according to the opioid antagonist protocols in subsection B, which they would not be required to give over-the-counter Narcan, they would not then, the law enforcement agency would not be required to have a physician medical director in order to give out Narcan.
Thank you for that. Representative Weichel, does that answer your question? Committee, further discussion. Representative Ruiz.
So it sounds like the purpose of the bill is, one, clean up the language, and two, set up the funding and the amount of the funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. The purpose of the amendment would be to keep the liability protections for law enforcement officers distributing Narcan, but allow them to not have to get a physician to be the director of their program in addition to the fund set up in Section 1.
Thank you.
Representative Berquist. I think I'm okay. Okay. Committee, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Amendment carries. Committee, further discussion. Back on the bill. Representative Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're back on the bill. I was going to propose an amendment, but I decided not to, mainly because I couldn't really figure out the language. But here's the situation. I don't know if everyone knows about an organization called DECA, and DECA it's an agency that offers substance abuse treatment. But one of the things that they also do, in coordination with a couple of funds and with the AG, is they have funding for Narcan or naloxone. And they can get it at a considerable less cost. I spoke to one of the representatives that offered this bill, and when he was trying to do the math to see how much funding to stipulate in the bill, I talked to him about DECA being able to get the same Narcan at half the price that he was figuring on. And then it occurred to me that there's several funds out there, and I've discovered at least 3 already, that all do the same thing. And this one is either going to be the third or it might be the fourth fund for this, but it's open to law enforcement, EMS, and with DECA, a private citizen. If you're wanting to get help with paying for it, they can help you with that too. So I couldn't figure out a way to put an amendment together that would ask the AG if they could combine the funds and let DECA and other nonprofits, because they're able to get the naloxone cheaper, but at the same time to be able to say, this new funding that we're talking about, because in the bill it still says $4 million, that law enforcement would be like priority. They would be #1 priority. And so I couldn't figure that out, but I'm saying this out loud, hoping that the AG will hear this and somehow they would figure out how to be efficient with this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee further discussion? Seeing none. Carly, do you have the other amendment? I have another amendment. And while we brace ourselves for Carly's explanation of this amendment, which will probably take the rest of the afternoon, Carly? Oh, and is there a motion? Motion by Representative Rees, second by Representative Bryce on the amendment. Carly, will you explain the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this will be a long-winded one. On line 32, it will strike 4 million and insert 500,000.
Committee discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Amendment carries. Now I would entertain a motion. Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out House Bill number 2159 favorably as amended.
Do I have a second? Second by Representative Blex. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, committee. Okay, next we will start working 2284. Do I have a motion? President Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out House Bill 2284 favorably.
A second? Representative Blex. Discussion on the bill. I have an amendment. Do I have a motion? I'll make a motion for the amendment. Do I have a second? Representative Bryce. Okay. Carly, would you like to explain the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment is similar to what we saw yesterday, but now both the chair and the ranking minority member of each of the committees listed would be included on the appeals committee.
Committee discussion on the amendment. Representative McDonald.
I just wanted to be on the record as expressing my appreciation for this amendment, or this change in the amendment. I think it's really important that the majority party keep in mind the minority party's seat at the table when coming up with things like this. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Committee further discussion. Representative Berquist.
It's probably going to just be picked up in grammatical, but on line 9, a spelling on managed. And that's not part of your amendment. That's fine.
Mr.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I see it.
Mr. Chair, if you would give me a little discretion to fix that, I can fix that if this amendment is adopted.
We would. Committee further discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, I would close on my amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On the bill. Back on the bill. Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out House Bill number 2284 favorably as amended.
I have a motion. Do I have a second by Representative Ellis? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Bill is passed. Thank you, committee. Okay, next we will In committee, I will tell you, I want this bill to be clean, but what I'll tell you is, however long it takes, that's when you'll get out of here. So if you want to take all day with amendments, then that's what we'll do. So anyway, with that, this would be, I would open the hearing on 2284, or 2217. Sorry, I need to scratch that. 2217. Do I have a motion? Motion by Representative Bryce. A second? Second by Representative Blex. Discussion on the bill. Representative Orpezzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have several amendments, which I would like to go ahead and offer and see if there's any discussion or if there could be any compromise, but I'm going to go ahead and just offer my first amendment on the bill. And that would be, oh, they have a little tag, sorry. I'm not seeing the tag. They, they look the same to me.
Is there a second on the amendment? Second by Representative
Oh,
McDonald.
employees, sorry, my amendment is about employees.
Would you please explain your amendment?
Oh, sure.
Or call it.
Okay, so when we were talking about employees, there's been several conversations about how many employees will be needed to extend this ask of the IG. And since we've been so careful and so fiscally responsible, I just wanted to make sure that that is relative also to this ask. And in saying that, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this was also brought up in the Senate last year when this bill was heard, to limit the expansion to 5 employees. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get an exact number of how much that would cost, but there was about $600,000 that we had changed. I adhered to the amendment just to, as kind of a placeholder, but then ultimately get a number for that. But what I can tell you is last year it was like $755,000 of the amendment I looked at last year.
Very good. Committee for discussion on the amendment. Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of this amendment. I have watched as budget after budget passed out often unanimously from committees has been slashed and slashed by appropriations and others. So I think in this year of austerity, it does make sense to put some parameters down. And from what I understand, this is a reasonable amount. So I'll be in support of this amendment.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, you may move your amendment.
Okay, I'll move my amendment.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign? No. Chair's in doubt. All in favor of the amendment, raise their hand. Opposed, raise your hand. Amendment fails. Back on the bill.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chair.
Opezzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My second amendment is in regards to civil action, in regards to this bill, which I did appreciate the proponent of when they brought this bill, that sometimes people are investigated and they're not necessarily even aware of the investigation. But I just wanted to make sure, in case there was any false reports, and this is more of just a guideline to make sure that we're doing our due diligence when we are investigating people and that they're not under any hardship, because this is a Medicaid program. So these people are not flush with cash. And so I just want to make sure if they have to in any way defend themselves and found to be that they were not fraudulent in having Medicaid, that they could actually receive some actual damage for that and have some, I'm missing the word, but have something to come up with to, support themselves.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Reeves. Committee discussion on the amendment.
I have one, thanks.
Representative Weichel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment seems quite reasonable, given what's at stake in these investigations for individuals, and so I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Committee further discussion on the amendment. Representative Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I also very much agree with this amendment. With the expansion of the powers given to the Inspector General that didn't previously have, I think this is in line. If you're gonna be able to issue warrants and, and do, having to be under, where's all the language that I'm looking for? Be under oath, it's like going to court, and so if you're being accused, falsely accused, there should be some compensation.
Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. False information sometimes is hard to define, but we're not taking away the option for that person to go do a court action anyhow in this. Am I reading this correctly?
Thank you, Mr. I'm
We're
not
not
quite sure the
removing
question.
the option for a person without this amendment to take something to court.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So without this amendment, an individual who may have been falsely accused would have damages just available at common law. If there was a publication, I can't imagine this would happen, but a publication that had their name, they could maybe go for defamation or libel, or if there's negligence on the part of the Office of the Inspector General, a civil action would be allowed there, but this is one that would be specific to reporting false information.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Committee further discussion. Representative Weichel.
Just thank you, Mr. Chairman. To respond to the previous member that said that, I think we just have to remember when we say people may have the option to go to court or file their claims, we're talking about the lowest income Kansans who really don't have access to the resources to necessarily do that. And I think that's just important to keep in mind.
Committee further discussion. Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to the lowest income, I had a renter I had to evict, and they ended up with free legal services that challenged it in court. So it's out there. Thank you.
Committee further discussion. Seeing none, you may move your amendment.
I move my amendment, Mr. Chair.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion fails. Back on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like I said, I have four. So my next amendment is in regards to crime, and I can let them pass it out before I start explaining. Sorry.
Sure. A second by Representative McDonald.
Okay, so. Gotcha. Thank you.
Would you care to explain your amendment, or Carly can for you, one way or the other? Or Jan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carly and I split up the drafting of the amendment, so that's why we're splitting up this. Okay. So the first thing that this amendment would do is it would define the phrase "other illegal acts" that's used a couple places in the bill to specify that those illegal acts do not include violations of federal immigration law. Additionally, on page 5, it would add a paragraph 4 that would make it a violation of this section for the Inspector General to investigate or make reports concerning illegal acts that are not directly related to state cash, food, or health assistance programs, and it would make a violation of this section a Class A non-person misdemeanor.
Thank you, Jenna. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, you may move your amendment.
I move my amendment.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion fails. Back on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This would be my last amendment, and it's for a sunset.
Do I have a second? Second by Representative Reeves. While they're passing out the amendment, would you like to explain it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is just a sunset, and if I'm not mistaken, was also offered by the Senate when this bill was heard last year. Just to see how it goes, I would hate for us to be expanding to 10 to 12 FTEs and then not recouping something or making sure this isn't really a good resource to be using. I want to make sure that it is something that is revisited as well. So it was just more of just making sure that we're knowing exactly that we're getting the most bang for our buck with the expansion and that we are really doing a good thing for the state.
Thank you for that. Committee, further discussion? Seeing none, you may move your amendment.
I move my amendment.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that.
Back on the bill. Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment.
Do I have a second? Second by Representative Bueller. Representative Bryce, would you like to explain your amendment, or would you like Carly to?
I'd like Carly to, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, on page 2, as it's coming around, you'll see on line 12, we strike that comma and insert and then strike from line 13 and 14, the state employee health benefits plan.
Committee discussion on the amendment. Representative Weichel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I ask the carrier or the bringer of the amendment just the rationale behind this?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This was a request from the Inspector General's office to make the employee health benefit plan line up with other statutes. So it's sort of a technical or a technical amendment, basically.
Representative Weichel.
So does that preclude the Inspector General from investigating provider fraud within the state employee health plan?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to say out loud, I think it is a bad look when we exempt ourselves from laws that we create. So I'll be in opposition of this. Thank you.
Committee further discussion on Representative Paizo.
I also have a clarifying question. What other statutes would this be in line with that we're trying to make a technical cleanup?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We were not made aware of other statutes in regards to this, so maybe the representative would have details. This does line up with an amendment adopted by the Senate in Senate Bill 488 last year.
Committee further, Representative Weichel.
Yeah, I think just a point of discussion for, thank you, Mr. Chairman, a point of discussion for the committee. When we heard this bill, we heard language that this was more so about going after fraud and abuse by providers and corporations and not as much by individuals. And if that is truly the intent of this bill, and that's where the majority of fraud is in these programs, the state employee health benefit plan is not exempt from those same providers. And so I think it's unfair and just unparalleled to be exempting that from this bill.
Thank you. Committee, further discussion. Representative Oropeza.
I just had one more discussion, one more statement to make on this amendment. I've personally never signed up for the state program, but I've recently been looking into it, and there are quite a few programs offered for state employees. So I would have to echo what Representative Weigel was saying earlier, that if we truly need to be parallel, and if we're truly looking into organizations and not individuals, I would have to concur with that. I was shocked by how many programs and how many offerings they have for the state. It was, quite frankly, overwhelming, and I'm still looking at it because I want to make sure I do the right thing for myself. But at the same regards, I just found it, there's just a lot of programs that are being offered for state employees, which I found to be very, obviously, a wonderful option. But at the same time, if we're rooting out fraud, let's truly root out fraud. Thank you.
Representative Reeves.
Ask the, no, don't have to ask anybody, I'll just make a statement. With this being taken out, as the Representative Oropeza mentioned, that there are a lot of programs. I know when I look at them, I do get overwhelmed. There's so many options that we have as a state employee. If we're taking out a big section of health that is not going to be subject to this bill, that takes out a whole lot of people and a whole lot of providers. And I just think that the Inspector General will not need the number of employees that he's going to be asking for because of that. It cuts down, it narrows down what he's going to be looking at. So I know that's not going to be something we're going to look at, but whoever is going to be looking at that, I think that's something that they really need to consider.
Representative Buehler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can appreciate what Representatives Oropeza and Reese were saying. However, I go back to lines 1 through 5, and if I just concentrate on the language and what this bill is trying to accomplish, and the revisers, I guess, can correct me, but it would appear that it's around KSA 75-7427. And then when I go look at the amendment, those two things appear to be different. And to me, that's where I understand, and maybe I'm reading this incorrectly, but that's where you strike that, and there may be, there might be something that with what Representative Oropeza was saying. However, it seems to me that what we're truly trying to focus on is what's in lines 1 through 5 in that statute that's mentioned there. And it's like the amendment makes that delineation that really lines 1 through 5 is what we're talking about.
Thank
So
you,
just
Representative.
my interpretation, that might be incorrect.
I think it's not. Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one other comment is they can still be looked at if they're committing Medicaid fraud, so the idea of Medicaid fraud investigation is not hindered at all. Thank you.
Committee, further, Representative Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is legislative research able to tell us how many people are insured by the state employee health plan right now?
Representative Rivas.
Yeah, I've got a question. I'm not quite sure who to ask it to. So, as a provider, I've had patients that had insurance and Medicaid. And so what happens if there's an investigation on the Medicaid side and they also have private insurance, could be the state health plan, I mean, so where do you draw those lines? And then my other question is who handles fraud or abuse on insurance plans? Is that the insurance commissioner's office? Is that go to the IG? Is that AG? Where does that go? I mean, are we still, I know they're investigating insurance fraud and private insurance, but who does that?
Jenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll double check with our office on this, but typically with a private insurance plan, that private insurance company would be doing, some of its own investigations, just in line with their bottom line, ensuring, efficient things like that, and doing records review. But I'll have to check on what role the state insurance department has.
Thank you for that. I kind of agree with Representative Bueller. It's right here in those first 5 deals here. This is an audit, investigate and audit all state cash, food, and health assistance programs. I'm not sure that the state insurance plan is what I would call an assistance program, but so. Committee, further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. Amendment is passed. Discussion on the bill. Seeing none? Representative, would you like to move your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move my amendment.
All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. No, we already did. Never mind. We're back on the bill. Sorry. And I got my cheat sheet out here to follow along. That hadn't helped me a bit. Okay, back on the bill. Do I have a motion to move the bill? Representative Bueller, second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out House Bill number 2217 favorably as amended.
I have a motion and a second by Representative Berquist. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. No. Motion passes. Would you guys like your votes recorded? Okay, McDonald, Orpeza, Ruiz, Stocksdale, and Weichel. Anybody else want their votes recorded? Very good. Committee, further discussion about anything? We will work Monday. I think we have 2 bills to work and 1 to hear. So with that, everybody have a great weekend, and we are adjourned.